How are you?
Senator Clarkson will be right back.
Okay.
But we can, I think, get started. Senator Ballant, I think, is driving to the State House and is on her phone. Commissioner, I had written you and you had responded with a couple of questions, but I'd like to have a discussion in terms of the recovery grants. I'm a little confused as to, I saw in one of the charts that there was uh, a, either a continuation, a further continuation in the ARPA money for the PPP program or some sort of set aside for business stimulation. Am I correct in that?
Yes, I don't know the exact dollar amount, but yeah, there's additional PPP funds in ARPA.
That's in addition to the extension that they did.
Yeah, I believe it's May 31st. I think it's extended to May 31st.
So there's, okay, that's what I thought. I thought the Trump administration had done that. You're saying that happened in the March bill?
I don't know if it was done in the bill. I think it was done outside of the bill about the extension, but that technicality I do not know. But I know that it went to, originally it was in the Consolidated Appropriations Act in December through Trump, and that went through March. And then just, I don't know, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, they extended it to to May 31st, the extension.
So to the best of your knowledge, is that the only set aside for in the generic field of economic recovery grants, and any other money the state wants to put in would have to come out of the $1 billion discretionary pot?
So there are other business programs. There's shuttered venues grants. There's restaurant stabilization that are direct from SBA. And then there's a state small business credit initiative, which comes out of U.S. Treasury. Separate and distinct from this governor's discretionary, well, I call it the State Fiscal Recovery Fund.
Could you send us links to those three programs, or?
I wish I could. They're not all. So I'll have to look. But SBA does not have information yet on the restaurant stabilization, as far as I know. That has not opened. Shuttered venues has opened, but I think they had some technical difficulty last week. I'll have to just check on where they're at.
And who's administering that, Joan? Isn't that the Arts Council's involved and the humanities? Who's administering the shuttered venue?
SBA. That is a direct national program. Sort of like when you think about what people had to go through to go and apply for EIDL, they go to an SBA portal, and SBA has rules, regs, the whole portal. So yeah, I think we actually posted on our site. I'll have to just check. So there's shuttered venues and there's restaurant stabilization.
And small business. That's also SBA?
No, that is U.S. Treasury.
U.S. Treasury.
And could you just describe a little bit of what you know about that one?
Sure.
Yeah.
So that one is a debt or equity program. So, so this was initiated back in 2009. They had a similar program as part of ARA. And at the time, it was just used, the state used it through VITA, and VITA organized a debt program. And what they did is they should probably talk more about what they did with it, but it was mainly loans, and they took loan participations. This time it's a significantly more amount of money. We probably want to do something with equity, since we've never done or had an opportunity like this to do equity funds. But that guidance has not come out, and that process, the process for the state to apply for that through Treasury, would be extended all the way into, I think, December or something. So I don't think there's the rush, but that does have to be leveraged funds. There's no grant money in there. That is either debt or equity. So imagine a group of CDFIs and those types of organizations within the state would want to get some of that to help with their portfolios. And there are
And Joe,
guidelines. Yep.
do they apply directly to the U.S. Treasury, or who's it?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So,
Yes. And we're waiting for guidance on that about how that actually would get done.
So when you say debt or equity, you mean they have to take out a loan or they have to give up a percentage of their business to get the money? How does that work?
Yeah, it's either, they're going to go get we're going to get money, right? Either Vita or all these other lending institutions will be able to have this money to lend, or we portion it out to equity investors. I'm sorry, not equity investors, equity funds, so that investments could be made in companies that need either startup or continuation or scale up capital. So it's a good kind of opportunity to get funding to ventures.
So would that be a perfect fit for David Bradbury?
Yeah, it
I
sounds
think
like that.
so. Yeah, I think that's right. Yes.
Okay.
And so
Okay, so I think just so we're on the same page, and I know you probably pushed back a little bit, but I liked what you were saying the last time you came in, that you're going to try and not take into consideration some of these other funds that are set asides in terms of prioritizing any future recovery grants that we might authorize. So the classic example here is, even though restaurants clearly have hurt a lot, it would seem to make sense to go to the restaurant pot of money in terms of helping them before they dipped into your suggested $30 million in the first year for recovery grants. Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, I mean, we would totally advise everybody and anybody who's listening to, as soon as SBA makes that available, to apply to that. Our understanding that it is going to be a very good program. And what do I mean? I mean, they're going to take at least the initial discussions. Again, this is not etched in stone. I don't have any inside, poop on how they're going to operate this, but our understanding is that the calculation would be 2019 revenue less 2020 revenue, and that's the amount of their grant. So it is significantly, it's a significant program. The problem is it's a national program, and I think they do have limits on the size, but the expectation is it would be oversubscribed. So we do know people will be closed out. And we've talked about this often, about smaller businesses or women or minority owned, maybe the late to the party and may not get funds. So the question and the difficulty is just one of timing. When will that program become available?
Right. And if SBA is running it, will our Vermont SBA be administering it for Vermont restaurants? No,
that is not how it works. It's always a national group.
So the national program and the national pot of money is how much again?
I think it's 64 billion, but I could be off on that. I've been looking at too many documents, but I think it really would be good if the committee heard directly from Darcy on this. She will have much more up to the minute information than I do. And my understanding from one of the calls I went on, the congressional calls, that they expect to launch it in April, but I don't know. I know that shuttered venues had just opened, and that was something that was put into statute back in January. So, these things take time to develop. And so anyway, the difficulty is just timing. So do we really turn away somebody, who wants to apply for restaurant stabilization, but does not yet have an award or a notification of an award? So that is the balance that we're going to have to face. But clearly our recommendation would be to folks, get the federal money, go and get the federal money first, for sure. And we'll have to figure out a way to warn folks that if they do end up getting it, there's a risk of duplication and a risk of reclaim and all the rest of the kind of notifications that we would have to do. But yeah. I mean, I did also learn from Darcy. Good.
Aren't you afraid? Because if I recollect, my recollection of the CARES Act, the way any reclamation may happen, it may happen by the feds. They want their money back, or you can't qualify because you got state money first. I hope there's a way to massage that. So, for instance, if you did give out money, is there a way to say, we expect you to apply for this, and if you get that money, then you need to return the money to us? I have no idea what the possibilities are at this point, but clearly we want to preserve as much of this money for the businesses that need it, that don't have other sources, obviously.
Yes, we have to thread that. Yes.
Senator Rahm.
Joan, I mean, I'm sure you've said this before in various ways, but I just need to hear it again. You know, it feels like saying like, go get that federal money is really hard for some businesses. And even it's not one time, but it does feel like there's a transition period where ACCD should be asking for like another staff position that's devoted to, you know, small business support through this process, because it just like some business, I hear all the time from tax accountants and business support folks who say, I'm doing this in the middle of the night on my free time to help a business that doesn't have the money or the wherewithal. So like, can't you all, you know, build a little bit of temporary infrastructure to be more helpful to individual businesses through this process?
Yeah, so here's a couple of difficulties. One, there are many technical assistance providers in the state. I just got a spreadsheet from somebody. It's about 35 different groups. So our preference, especially when we're the grantor of money, is that we should not also be the ones that actually help people apply. It feels very much like a conflict. So typically, it's the technical assistance providers will be those ones. Now, what we need to do is get in touch with them as soon as this is enacted to go through that process so that they are trained and they could help people apply. At the agency, we are involved in actually designing the system, implementing the system, accepting applications, reviewing applications, approving applications, sending information to finance, getting checks out. Like, we can't do everything. We really can't. We will screw up something. So I noticed throughout the session, there have been many instances where all of a sudden the agency is named as like, create a position and do this, create a position and do that. And so I really urge the committees and everyone to understand that what we're doing is we are putting forth and advocating to get the funding, to advocate for the businesses, to design the programs and get the word out, but we can't also be the ones who are the counselors.
So I think you misunderstood me, because it was in response to you saying, go get federal money. Like, that's easy, yeah. Right? So there is not that federal money. Who's helping?
No, yeah, I mean, look, nothing is easy about this. Nothing. Like we acknowledge that. Like we were just reviewing what the possible guidelines are going to be. It's not easy. And we're going to get a lot of critique about our guidelines because it's not easy, right? The SBA funds, what my urging is that it's very generous package. It's based on revenues. It's very generous. So when I say that with a gusto, like go get the federal money. That is the best thing that a small business can do right here, right now, is do their 2020 tax return. Get that done, because that is going to be a requirement, and apply to our newsletter, where our newsletter comes out twice a week, and twice a week we do any update on any funding opportunity that we know. If SBA sends us a link, we post it in the newsletter. If SBA,
you add all of us to the newsletter? I didn't even know about the newsletter.
Sign up for the newsletter. Like we do this. We were doing it 3 times a week. We've moved it to twice a week, but yes. And I could send a link. I'll get the link for you all, and I'll send it to you so that you have it.
Great.
So that there's constant outreach, but yeah, I understand. And we got that critique last time. Businesses were really stressed, and they said, you keep telling us to do this and do that and do it quickly. And I get that, but I think without warning folks, that would be a disservice, right? It's competitive money, and it's a national program, and people are going to be out there getting it. And if they get closed out, they'll have our program. Our program is not as generous. We all know that. We all know why that is. And we've put a lot of different machinations, which are going to be difficult to implement, difficult for people to understand. And we will do our best to do that. We got to do translations. We've got a lot on our plates. And I don't mean to sound this like, I'm sounding the violin here, but we just want to do a good job. And we can't take on every single possible issue. There are a lot of.
Joan, we've heard over the last weeks of all the technical assistance that's out there. So quite honestly, we just heard yesterday from the community action agencies. They're a great resource for smaller businesses to go to. Our regional development corporations, great to go to. That's what they're for. So we need to, we'd love your list of the technical assistance. You said you just got all the list, Joan, of all the technical assistance out there?
Well, actually, I'm not even sure if it's an all-inclusive list. This was in relation specific to.
It's a good list. If you'd send that to us, that would be helpful for us to send our constituents to the very local and regional technical assistance they have available to them. And we just have to be reminded, we've heard from these people. They're there to help.
So my question, Joan, following up on Senator Rahm's question, did we give at any point any monies to you to fund these people to do technical assistance as independent contractors? Or I totally agree with your position on the conflict of interest, and the department shouldn't be providing this technical assistance, but it would be another thing if we gave money either to you or directly to some organization who does this technical assistance, say, this is what it's for, applying for state and federal business assistance grants.
Right.
Accountants, lawyers, whoever they may be,
Yes, I understand. So there are a number of different pockets. One is annually, we provide funding and support to the Small Business Development Center and to the RDCs and to the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund. And so that's a normal course of business. Last year, as you know, there was a specific set aside on technical assistance that a number of organizations applied to and received. Everybody from the Vermont Chamber to the RDCs to Champlain College to, I'm probably leaving a few others out. This year, that is not in the ask. However, in H315, we are given the right through the statute to spend up to 5% on everything from admin to also including technical assistance.
Okay.
We don't know how much we're going to have left. We have yet to get the requirements and get a price on how much it's going to cost in the system. But, is there additional money for technical assistance? In ARPA, there is such a thing called Community Navigators, and that's also an SBA-run program, and they will be soliciting applications, my understanding. And again, you should probably have SBDC in. My understanding is that SBDC will apply for that and try to act as the hub and spoke for all the number of technical assistance providers. What we do know from our experience in the first and second round of this, the Center for Women in Business Enterprise was invaluable in terms of helping people create their financial statements and just everything. So we work in tandem. We try to connect with them early to figure out how they're going to help us with outreach and how to help with actual applicants who we could refer folks to when they call our helpline. And some are really, really good and very attentive, and others we don't hear. But the fact that we don't hear doesn't mean that they're not helping. It's just we're not always following up on each and every case because we're busy actually executing on the other tasks. So,
okay, who should we get in from SBDC?
Linda Rossi is the state director.
Okay.
And she could talk more about what they have done in the past and also what they, I think, are intending to do once SBA comes out with this Community Navigator program. What else? Was there a question in there I didn't answer?
No, you did answer it very well. Thank you. Okay, so we still don't know whether the governor's signing 315, so the clock on guidance is still put off from 10 days from the date when he signs, but it sounds like you're busy on that regardless, trying to get those.
Michael, isn't today the last day? Doesn't it, if he doesn't sign it today, it goes into law?
I don't know.
Joan, do you know?
I think that's right. I don't know the exact date it hit his desk. So
Do you have any insights?
I do not. I do not. We have been heads down.
Right. Administration has a lot on the line here as well as the rest of us.
We only have about 5 or 6 more minutes. So, Joan, I don't know that we've heard a lot, but I think it's in the New York bailiwick of the $300,000 on the Montreal office. Are you in a position to just give us a brief overview of the need?
Sure. Wow. I almost feel like this was a million years ago we talked about it. So much has happened. But yeah, so the idea is this. We have a part-time person at the agency who does everything from international trade to business recruitment, helps with site selection, and many other things. And so the idea behind lead generation in a market like Quebec, and let's just take Quebec as it's the most glaring example. They're large, they're right next to us. They have a huge aerospace industry. Many of them may want to come to Vermont because they need a U.S. foothold. They want U.S. military contracts, just as an example. And we, when our part-time person can't possibly be in the market all the time. So we want to establish a situation where a consultant could help us in that market for everything from business recruitment. As you know, we don't recruit from all other states and whatnot. We do think the fair amount of activity comes in from Quebec and from Canada. It is our largest trading partner. And many of the Vermont success stories have started with an expansion into Vermont from Quebec and have done really well, right? We look at Peerless up in St. Albans, Revision Military, who has operations in 2 different Vermont locations. There's Lucas Industries bought PCM in Springfield. So there's a fair amount of foreign direct investment. And why should we do it in a reactive mode? Let's be more proactive. Let's hire somebody who could do that level of lead generation, be in the market, and help us. We upped our game a bit over the last several years in terms of combining international trade shows with recruitment. Why is that? Because at different sector trade shows, all the players will be there. You'll get to meet, for example, at the aerospace show, who are those entities that want a U.S. presence? And so this is an opportunity for recruitment. And we just want to up our game, and this would be our way of doing that. And we think that could buy us 2 years, and that will give us enough of an idea whether the pipeline has been developed well enough that should we keep this up? Should we abandon it? Should we hire a full-time person there? Like, it's really an experimental test to see what could we glean from this important marketplace.
So it's basically hiring a consultant, not necessarily having an office space or that person having staff. It'd be a fairly high, well-connected person to be on the lookout for things for Vermont opportunities. Is the time frame the one that's the best? I mean, we have this money. Should it start July 1st or should it start January 1st? Should it start the following July? The border's still closed, right?
The border is still closed. I guess it's really the expectation that the border would probably open. I don't know, but will it open in the summer? So July 1st could seem like a good logical start date. That was the thinking initially when we went into this ask, and still continues to be. We think this is an important function.
Okay. I guess the one other narrow question I have in the 5 minutes or less that we have is and probably outside your bailiwick, the Act 250 provision. I know that you talk about, what was it, $750,000 a year over 3 years. How did that number get? I know it was in your economic recovery handout that you gave to us. It may be somebody else's expertise, but how does that get calculated? Is that savings in fees or time or?
Yeah, so I could just talk a little bit about it in a high level way that it represents workforce. So in order to expedite some of these things, the regulating agencies will need more help. And I'm not the person to speak to it. Really, you need to speak to ANR, I would suggest, because they are the ones who know about their backlog or know about the long queue. As we know, there's broadband, there's housing, there's all sorts of projects that are getting proposed, and most of which would need permits. And we don't want it to get bottlenecked there and then prevent our ability from leveraging these funds. So that's the thought process behind
So
it
even
was
though-
it was in economic development, and I'm not sure how it ended up there because it probably spans many different buckets, but it's there. So
Thank
it's
you for
really
that. So basically what you're saying, even though you're going to eliminate Act 250 review, there's so many projects coming down the line that there's going to be workload increases within ANR or ACCD, and it's a ballpark of how much money you need to staff up for that. Okay.
Yeah, I think in actuality, in the budget language that's proposed, that it actually goes to ANR. It doesn't come to ACCD since we don't regulate. So it's really, I think it's ANR and it's fire safety and I guess NRB, right? It's probably those three regulating agencies.
When this happened, someone said this happened with ARA funds as well.
I had heard that because when I saw the language and I didn't know how we got the language, and that was precisely what was done in ARA. So again, I do defer to ANR for them to speak to it.
Yeah, we need to get testimony on that.
That's some
I
other-
vaguely remember that, but I think we have 2 minutes to get to the floor.
Okay. So thank you very much. I realize I can feel it. We'll try and be judicious with your time in the future. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you, everybody.
Oh,
Bye.
thank you, Joan.
Bye.
Thanks for